Hello learners, welcome to our program of Tribal Entrepreneurship and Economics. Today we are going with the module 3 and lecture 5. This module is actually dealing with the managerial and entrepreneurial approaches. Till this time in module 3 we have studied about the brief overview of the managerial and entrepreneurial approaches, that how the managerial approaches could be better for the tribal entrepreneurs, and in the similar fashion how the entrepreneurial approaches can also be beneficial for the tribal entrepreneur. Then we have discussed about the importance of both the approaches, and it is true that none of the approach could be singly be best for the any entrepreneurship activities. So we have to take the benefits of both. Then we have discussed about the managerial approaches to tribal entrepreneurship, its emphasis on stability, predictability and efficiency, and then the decision making based on managerial approaches. Now in today's lecture we will deal with the entrepreneurial approach to tribal entrepreneurship, its contrast and complements, managerial entrepreneurship and integration of both the approaches, and we will take one example as a case study to deal it with respect to tribal entrepreneurship. So as in the last program, in the last lecture, we have discussed about the entrepreneurial approach. Here also we want to explain it further, that the entrepreneurial approach is actually looking forward for risk-taking approach, where the entrepreneur does not work in a tandem to work like an employee. Rather, it looks forward that how the business can be sustained here and in future also. Not only this, it also tries to initiate, innovate and motivate its employees, its organization. Here in the screen you might be seeing some of the pictures whose examples have been delivered by Ashish sir in module 2, who have been a good role model for tribal entrepreneurship. Now let us see what are the contrast between the managerial approach and the entrepreneurial approach of entrepreneurship. So here you can see that the managerial approach looks for seamless workflow operations of day-to-day business of an enterprise. What does it mean? It means that a manager, primarily being an employee of the organization, can look forward for those activities which are required to run the day-to-day business. While on the other hand, an entrepreneur approach is to plan and to fund the business from scratch. So entrepreneurial activity actually start even when the business has yet not started, and it ends even after the day-to-day operations for the betterment of the business in the future. The managerial approach looks for minimum financial loss. As I have mentioned, that manager is essentially an employee to the organization. He will definitely be looking forward to that with his activity and with the activities under his management, the organization should bear a minimum loss if this is the case. Otherwise, he will always aspire to run an profitable organization. On the other hand, the entrepreneurial approach actually takes wider risk so that in future it could give multiple benefits. So this is the contrast, that the manager will be looking for minimizing the losses, while the entrepreneur can take as much loss as he can understand can bring the organization in the future foothold. Then comes the managerial approach is rewarded with bonus, increments and promotions. We can say that how a manager can work, or for what benefits a manager can work. So the managers or employees basically works to get the bonus, promotions and increments on the line of making the business profitable, and naturally they will get these emoluments only when the businesses can run in a profitable way. While the entrepreneur actually does not take these types of emoluments. It actually looks forward that business should reach to the new heights and the name and fame of business will grow by leaps and bounds. Next comes the managerial approach tries to secure the present. Yes, the managerial ability and the managerial approach of business is like that they want to save the date. They want that their organization could work in such a manner, in such a flow that everyday business will be smooth and seamless. While on the entrepreneurial side, they actually vision for the future, and so they work in that a way that not only the present but the future aspirations can also be met with their zeal, innovation and entrepreneurship. So we have seen that there are multiple contrasts in a way when we see between the managerial approaches and entrepreneurial approaches. Now let me see how these approaches actually complements to the businesses. We have already discussed that not a single approach can be beneficial for any business, and the same is true for the tribal entrepreneurship as well. In a tribal entrepreneurship, the tribal population, the tribal people, the tribal businessmen need to have both type of approaches in their businesses to run them for the present and for the future as well. So here there are some complementing factors which actually helps both of the approaches for a businessman. The number one is delegating the responsibility and authority. In both the cases, we can say that the managerial approach may have better idea of delegation of responsibility and authority, but at the same time, the entrepreneurial approach also looks forward for delegating the authorities and responsibilities over their peer group. Then the next comes behaving consistently. Even if a business is running through the managerial approach or through the entrepreneurial approach, they have to behave consistently to run their business in a great manner, in a customer satisfaction point of view. Planning and prioritizing is the third point, and it is true that for both the managerial point of view and for the entrepreneurial point of view, planning is one thing which is required. It is true that if a manager is learned from some higher organization, might have done an MBA, he may have a better idea of doing the planning on pen and paper, while an entrepreneur may not have these kind of approaches, these kind of planning over the paper, but naturally he has this idea that what he wants from his organization in the future. So the planning and prioritizing are the essential elements of both the approaches. Next comes the communicate openly and effectively. Manager and entrepreneurial approach needs those types of leaders who can communicate easily, who can communicate openly, and who can communicate effectively with their employees, with their customers, and with the society at large. Because if the communication gap is there, the product may be of good, services may be of good quality, but at the same time, since they are not dealing with the communication, there is a communication gap. So these products or these services may not get those benefits, those sale for which they could be aspiring for. And then last is the institute controls. Here institute controls means, from the management point of view, we say it as a line of command, that the employees should get their command from a single manager, otherwise there will be some haphazard kind of activities. In the same way, the tribal entrepreneurship also requires chain of command in their business, and it is automatically there because mostly one single person from the tribal community come forward with the idea of entrepreneurship and the other follows them. In that way, the institute control is also visible in the entrepreneurial approach as well. So we can see that these are the complementing factors of both the approaches which are actually required in the tribal entrepreneurship to make the tribal business successful. I am talking to thing as a successful because making the thing profitable will again take time and some business mind also, but at the same time it is not the tribal business idea to become a profitable. It is a tribal business idea to become a successful first and then making it on a scale to make it a profitable venture. Now, as I have said that integrating both the ideas is important for the tribal entrepreneurship, for the namesake, for any kind of business. So, there is one term which is saying managerial entrepreneurship, which is taking both the words management and entrepreneur at the same length. So, what is managerial entrepreneurship? Let's deal with it. Managerial entrepreneurship broadly refers to managerial as well as properties that promote innovations and changes that improve performance with respect to organizational products, processes and behaviors. Or simply speaking, it is the approach which requires both the managerial aspects as well as entrepreneurial aspects. Again, to remind you that managerial aspects are those aspects where the sustainability of business and day-to-day activity are important, while from the entrepreneurial aspects, innovation and enterprise nature is important for the organization. And if we mix both of these kinds of qualities, the managerial entrepreneurship term can be said for the same course of action. Now, that's why the line is saying that it is the blending of best of both, and this has been dealt with you. Then, after studying about the entrepreneurship in 1992, this idea of managerial entrepreneurship has come, and number of authors have studied it in detail and identified that the managerial entrepreneurship has 3 different dimensions. Let's see them. So, the dimensions of managerial entrepreneurships are: one, which is the product based, the other, which is the process based, and the third, which is the behavior based. If we go in detail, the basic idea of product based managerial entrepreneurship is when the customer satisfaction is the prime importance for any business. So, here the idea is making the product of that quality which attracts customer by themselves, or moreover, if we can say that the customers demand for those products from their own side. On the other hand, the process based managerial entrepreneurship is actually looking for the activities which are required basically from the managerial aspects like rules, regulations, working behavior. These are the process based managerial entrepreneurship. This is also required to make the organization work in the timeline and not be delayed in any ways. And the third one is behavioral based managerial entrepreneurship, where the risk taking ability of the entrepreneurs is seen, and this makes both the managerial aspect from the process based activities, from the process based dimension, and the risk taking capability from the behavior based aspect to make the managerial entrepreneurship a complete blend of both the features. Now, let me see how these dimensions can be judged or identified or can be exemplified in the tribal entrepreneurship. So, here is the point that managerial entrepreneurship in tribal business, in my opinion, the tribal businesses are largely based on their uniqueness of products, and this uniqueness actually comes from the product based managerial entrepreneurship. We know that some of the locality are good for bamboo cultivation, some other type of tribal locality are good for medicinal plants, some other type of tribal products are available in some other localities of Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Assam and other parts of the country. So, the product is the main theme of these tribal businesses. And what I can understand, the product-based managerial entrepreneurship is the best suited idea for the tribal entrepreneurship business. You can also see on the screen that the product is be required in such a sense that it should satisfy the customer, and these products should be so unique that even if the other tribal belt is producing these types of products, their flora, their fauna, their fragrance could be different from the other tribal belts as well. If we talk about the process based dimension, then it can be seen that there is a less relevance of these process based managerial entrepreneurship in the tribal business, because when I say the process based dimension actually looks forward for the processes, the doing business daily basis, which is basically required in the long organization, in the organization which are of modern nature. While in the tribal businesses, the processes, the upkeep of wages, the maintenance of the laborers, it all depends on their family or clan, and doing it on a process based managerial entrepreneurship aspect may be difficult for them. So what I can understand, that the process based dimension has less relevance from the tribal entrepreneurship point of view. On the other hand, the behavior based dimension is need to be developed in the tribal entrepreneurship. If you remember, we have talked about that the behavior based dimensions are actually related to the risk taking capability of the businessman. And here probably the tribal entrepreneurs or the tribal businessmen are less aware or maybe less looking forward to take such kind of risk. Naturally, they have the less access to the capital, they have less access to the knowledge of running the business over the different types of possibilities, and so they may have less risk taking capability. In that way, the behavior based aspect is required because it is the one of the best idea of being an entrepreneur, but in tribal entrepreneurship this is found very less in a sense. Now let us see one example as a case study here. I was looking into one research paper where it has been identified that there is a Dang district, D-A-N-G, in Gujarat, where the tribal populations are quite a large in number. And not only this, in that tribal community, almost 86% of population is under the particularly vulnerable tribal groups, which is popularly termed as PTGs. Means those tribal groups which are going to be extinct in a decade or maybe in a century. So in that area, the business of the tribals is the same, like collecting the raw materials from the forest and selling it to the nearby markets, and their basic idea is of collecting the bamboo, mahua, tendupatta and amla from the nearby forest, along with the timbers which are for their living habitats. Now the forest development, the forest department there has started a concept of mulki practice. Now what is this mulki practice? The mulki practice is that the tribal population, the tribal family can cut a tree only when they first seed the 3 saplings of different types of floras and faunas there, and by this way they can sustain the idea of remaining the forest area cultivated in that way. See the beauty of this idea, that first the 3 plants should be grown, then only one single tree can be given a permission to cut. Not only this, the idea is that no family or no tribal business can cut the trees more than 10 at a one go. It is not like that they plant the sapling of 300 plants and they cut the 100 trees in a one go. In that way, they are actually sustaining the idea of the forest there, and also developing the habit of one kind of entrepreneurship, because the money which they receive from cutting these trees, they are actually now using in the land development, so that this land can better yield the saplings into the new trees and they can grow by their own. And this actually has engaged into the wider area of entrepreneurship. So we can see by these examples that if this kind of philosophy can be adopted in number of tribal businesses, then not only the tribal business will flourish, the tribal business will get the funding from the nearby government itself, and also the flora and fauna may not be hampered because of the extreme use of those particular forest material. And if this type of philosophy can be used in number of places which are better occupied by the tribal communities, we can come up with good ideas of use of products and services in different ways as well. Not only this, this will also help the administration to have livelihood adaptability in that area, and there should be less chances of underdevelopment as well as joblessness. So in this way, we can identify that our idea of managerial entrepreneurship can give a boost to the tribal entrepreneurship. Thank you learners for listening me patiently.